Welcome to our presentation of the SIOP model for young learners. Today we will be looking at how this research-based method is applicable, yet needs to be modified for our very young learners. Before we discuss the SIOP methodology, we need to do a quick look at where it comes from. The three main approaches to teaching language learners is the grammatical, cognitive, and communicative approach. The grammatical approach is seen as null and void these days. It is a teacher-centered, passive learner approach that emphasizes rules and mnemonic devices and teaching through deductive language instruction. The cognitive approach encourages student-centered learning, with the learner making active meaning. However, it focuses particularly on explicit teaching of strategies and metacognition and emphasizing prior knowledge. Finally, we have the communicative approach. This approach encourages student-centered learning, is meaning-based, and scaffolding through peer and teacher interaction. The SIOP method is derived from the communicative approach. There are several theorists that support the various aspects of the communicative approach. Vygotsky emphasizes social interaction and the zone of proximal development. Cummins' main idea is of BICS and KELP. He believes that students need to develop both types of language, social BICS language as well as academic KELP language. KELP is easier to develop when students have strong L1 language because conceptual transference is made easier based on the common underlying proficiency theory. Finally, Krashen believes in lowering the affective filter, which is aided through cooperative learning and making comprehensible input so that all students can make meaning. Based on these theorists' belief, the SIOP method was developed based on the sheltered instruction method, which is a method of the communicative approach. Researchers Echevarria, Vogt, and Short developed a structured system, whereas ELL learners develop academic knowledge while acquiring their English language skills. Although this method is important for native language learners, it is crucial for ELL learners to be used by the content teachers. SIOP is based on cooperative learning, hands-on experiences, guarded vocabulary, and visuals. There are 8 components and 30 sub-protocols that make up an effective lesson. Every teacher must plan using the following 8 components. The first is preparation. Teachers need to have clearly defined language and content objectives. You need to state them orally and write them on the board. The second is building background. Building vocabulary is crucial, as well as linking concepts to students' background and past learning. The third is comprehensible input. Teachers help create meaning by using visuals, voice and language modulation, and hands-on experiences. The next is strategies. Teachers employ various scaffolding techniques, as well as using higher-order questioning through Bloom's taxonomy. In interaction, students need adequate wait time when asked a question, as well as participating in cooperative learning throughout the lesson, and to have L1 encouraged within the lesson. For practice and application, hands-on activities allow for language learners to make the abstract concrete. They need various manipulatives to develop their thinking, and all the literacy skills must be incorporated in every lesson. Students need to be participating in collaborative problem-solving activities as well. For lesson delivery, the lesson must clearly support language and content objectives while being paced to students' abilities. Finally, for review and assessment, at the end of the lesson, there must be the review of vocabulary and content, and the teacher needs to give feedback to the students as well as assess them. How does this relate to preschool learners? Well, who are they? Preschool children are at a unique developmental stage. They are still dependent on teachers and caregivers, yet they are craving independence. They are developing lasting friendships and are concerned with following rules and learn through dramatic play. All learners' vocabularies are growing in their native language. Therefore, all young learners need language development, not just ELL students. Young children learn best through play, stimulating talk from adults, hearing books read aloud, and through repetition and imitation of language patterns. The family is also crucial at this stage, so a strong family-teacher connection will further the child's development. The role of the teacher is to support and facilitate students through this developmental process. Although SIOP is still an effective methodology, there need to be adaptations for the needs of our young learners. For preparation, the learning objectives are far less formal than in older grades. For example, the pictures of using a mouth, the sun, clouds, and plants can help show the learning objective of talking about how plants grow. These objectives will be met throughout the day in different activities, and the same objectives can be used for the whole week. Supplementary materials for preparation include having a lot of books, blocks, puppets, dress-up clothes, props, art supplies, and other manipulatives for counting and categorizing. For building background, key vocabulary needs to be encouraged through oral language games, and teachers will do a lot of the writing for students the younger they are. Furthermore, most links to students should focus on their family lives, as it is the most concrete for them. When building comprehensible input, we need to think about how the average adult speaks at 170 words per minute. Young children, even in their native language, speak only at 120 words per minute. Keeping this in mind, we need to think of our language learners and regulate our speech to be much slower than we're used to. For strategies, we can use procedural scaffolding. This is modeling and practicing exactly how to perform procedures in order for students to understand what they need to do. Teachers can also use think-alouds to model appropriate metacognition when solving problems. In the interaction component, the interaction between teachers and students should be upbeat. Games, rhymes, poems, and read-alouds are all good ways to lower the affective filter and engage students. L1 should be encouraged throughout with the teacher, assistant, and peers. For practice and application, we need to remember that young children have very small attention spans. Therefore, teacher talk should be kept at a minimum, and oral language should be valued above all else. Remember, by developing oral language, we will be developing strong literacy skills. During lesson delivery, we can encourage on-task behavior by making sure students know exactly what to do through their procedural scaffolding, and when we remember that their attention span is short, so we keep the lesson at 30 minutes or less. Finally, for review and assessment, we need to remember that assessment is throughout the day, through games, observations, clinical interviews, child's work, individual assessments, and discussions with family. Furthermore, to assess students' language, a version of WIDA called the Kindergarten W-Apt is an effective measurement tool. Here is an example of some of my assessing techniques. This is an example from the CC Pensive, which is a conferring form that allows me to measure and assess their writing, reading, as well as other skills on a daily and weekly basis, and I can see their growth. Thank you very much for attending our presentation. Because we have just spoken about young preschool students and their use of SIOP, our questions will address bridging the gap between young learners and older learners. 1. Evaluate how you use each of the components of SIOP and how you would like to improve in your teaching methodology. 2. Choose and explain 3 effective techniques that you could use at your grade level within the SIOP model.